radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio. For the masses. Yeah, man. Today's Thursday. Or today's Monday, September 7th. Thursday. Today's Monday, don't freak out. 251 days into the new year, only 115 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planets. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? It's Monday. Yeah, man. And tonight, kicking off UFO week here on Fade to Black, night one is Peter Davenport of the National UFO Reporting Center, Nuforc. Tomorrow night, it's Alejandro Rojas, right here on TTSA. That's right. Why TTSA may be one of the cogs in the wheel to help us towards disclosure. That'll be tomorrow night. Also this week is the UFO Congress. Yeah. In case you didn't know that, UFO Congress is this week, kicking off virtually, just like everything else, but that's going on this week, and Alejandro's the MC, so we'll have Alejandro on here tomorrow night. Wednesday night, first-time guest, Kevin Estrella of Pyramids on Mars is here. Guitar player, contactee, experiencer, UFO radio host, all that stuff. With Kevin Estrella. Looking forward to this. Kevin Estrella will be here on Wednesday night, which means it's going to be one of my favorite shows. We're going to have UFOs, contact, sightings, music, guitars. Yeah, man. Oh, it's going to be a good show on Wednesday. It's going to be a great week. UFO week here on Fade to Black. Now, Peter Davenport will be with us at the bottom of the hour. And for those of you out there waiting for the new episode of The H Factor, it's coming. It may be tonight, after the show tonight. But let me say this about The H Factor. Rita and I are now, in addition to everything else that we do, which is a 7-day-a-week job, okay? In addition to everything else, we are now camera people. We're now lighting. We're now sound. We're now editors, content creators. We are everything, a full production team, and which includes makeup and hair and wardrobe. It's like, man, and this latest episode is the longest one that we have done yet, and we want to try to keep them short, but it's hard to do that. But anyway, you add a minute or two of content, and the next thing you know, it's just not like, well, it's a minute longer. It's not. It's like another day is what that is. And so we're in the middle of that, and the new episode is just awesome and so well written. And it's just one of those things. And we would have had it done yesterday, but we went, more on this in just a bit, but we went and visited family yesterday in the heat. More on that in just a minute. But anyway, the new episode's done. It's in the can. It's finished. It's it's not 99.9%, but it's definitely 95% ready. That extra 5% will get thrown in there tonight. We'll have it up there for everybody. Okay? All right. So tonight, Peter Davenport. Tomorrow night, Alejandro Rojas. Wednesday night, Kevin Estrella, Pyramids on Mars. And Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, over the weekend, this happened on Thursday, but again, over the weekend, Carolyn Ford was doing a ceremony with Einstein, the Crystal Skull, and she was heading down to Einstein's little lodge that he's got, and they were going to do a ceremony and some meditation. And we're going to do one of those for the Fadernauts and all of our Crystal Skulls here. So we're looking forward to that, and we may have that together by next week. Carolyn Ford, you can go and visit her at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com and go and get yourself your very own crystal skull. She has the best, all imprinted by Einstein, the ancient crystal skull of knowledge. That's right. EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Promo code Jimmy, 10% off of your order today. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Man, Twitter, we were busy all weekend, and I didn't get a chance to hang out much in social media. But I should say I didn't write anything. I was reading in between things, and Twitter was just on fire. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. Hashtag F2BQ is Faded Black Questions. You can also email throughout the show, Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. 2 chat rooms open. One over at Spreaker, one over at KGRA The Planet, and of course, everybody over on YouTube and Facebook and TuneIn and TalkStream Live and KGRA Radio, iHeartRadio. Hello to everybody out there. Okay, let's get to the breaking news. Crazy. Saudi Arabia has issued final verdicts against 8 suspects in the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi back in October of 2018, sentencing of 5 of the defendants to 20 years in prison. 1 got 10 years, and 2 others face 7 years in prison. Everybody escaped the death sentence. In Saudi Arabia, you get the death sentence for, like, wearing shorts. Right? I mean, you get the death sentence for anything in Saudi Arabia, but apparently not for killing somebody, especially a journalist. Who planned the killings and who ordered the killings were not investigated. They have gone free. Right? Might be the Saudi royal family, for that matter. The case is now officially closed. Unbelievable. Now, over the weekend, it got hot. It got hot. It got crazy, but not as crazy as Denver. And Denver will go today. Denver will go from experiencing record heat to preparing for a sudden snowstorm. That's right. It's kind of happening right now in Burbank too, by the way. The city is expecting more than a 60-degree drop in daily high temperatures from 101 degrees on Saturday to a predicted 35 degrees tomorrow, as in Tuesday. How crazy is it in Denver? Well, temperatures reached around 94 today at 2 p.m., 94 degrees. but not before plummeting to a predicted 35 degrees overnight and into Tuesday morning. That is insane. But we're going through it here in Burbank, too, as well. Talk about that in just a second. Samsung announced a $6.6 billion deal today with Verizon to help build its 5G United States networks. Samsung is already supplying 5G equipment to AT&T and Sprint, and currently working to expand its presence over in Japan. Details were not immediately released, with Samsung saying only that the deal is for network equipment. German doctors removed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny from a ventilator and said that he was responsive to verbal stimuli. He has come out of his coma. Navalny, a fierce critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin, has been in a medically induced coma since he allegedly was poisoned on Putin's orders while traveling in Russia. Wonder what he's got to say now. I don't think Moscow expected him to survive. Yeah, it's a crazy world, isn't it? All right. Let me hit this River Moon coffee. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today, Toby Jones. Toby Jones today is 54 years old. Gloria Gaynor today is 71. I will survive. Jazz great, and I couldn't believe this. Jazz great saxophonist Sonny Rollins today is 90. That's right. And in music circles, he's regarded as the greatest living improviser, and he is the greatest. Also today, The Pretenders' Chrissie Hynde is 69 years old. Absolutely incredible. Our dead guy's birthday today is Eazy-E. Moment of silence, please. 1993 to 1995, died at the age of 30. Now, I realize I just said 1963 to 1995, died at the age of 30, which means he would have been 31 or 32 years old, right? Not so fast. Eazy-E had a fake driver's license. That's right. Had to get into the club. Had to bump up his age. But actually, he died at the age of 30. Rapper, songwriter, record producer, and rap mogul who propelled West Coast rap and gangsta rap by leading the group NWA and its label Ruthless Records through to a new musical horizon. NWA's Straight Outta Compton was released in 1988 and is now ranked among the greatest and most influential albums in history. On February 24, 1995, he was admitted to the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles with a violent cough. On March 26, 1995, Eazy-E died from AIDS-induced pneumonia 1 month after his diagnosis. Now, I've talked about this before on the air, and I was with him right before this happened. I mean, like days. It still blows my mind. I'll never forget it because I came home, turned on the news, Eazy-E died today of AIDS. I was like, wait a minute, I was just, what? Crazy. Nice guy, too. It was estimated that he was worth about $50 million when he died. On this day in history, OTD 1996, more rap news. Tupac Shakur is shot several times in Las Vegas, Nevada after attending the Mike Tyson Bruce Seldon heavyweight fight at the MGM Grand. He died in a hospital several days later. Here's your Fader fact. Check this out. Another good one. It's a good one. The first McDonald's drive-thru was created in 1975 in Sierra Vista, Arizona, and it was near a military installation. It was created to serve military members who were not permitted to get out of their cars while driving off base and wearing fatigues. Yeah, and that is your Fader Fact. All right, tonight, kicking off UFO Week Night 1, we have the one and only Peter Davenport of the National UFO Reporting Center. Tomorrow night, it's Alejandro Rojas. He's going to be here. It's Alejandro on TTSA. Wednesday night, Kevin Estrella of Pyramids on Mars is here. Thursday night's another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, officially, let me hit. I know, right? I'm talking to TB on Twitter. You had it right when they first reported on Navalny, J Church Radio. You said Putin. The only question about Putin's involvement ever is polonium or nerve agent. I know. Oh, man. RivermoonCoffee.com. That is the best coffee in the world. RivermoonCoffee.com. Use the promo code F2B Blend. 15% off of your order today. It's the best coffee in the world. Man, have I ever told you guys the story about Rivermoon Coffee? About how they make this coffee? One of these days, we need to get Jeff and Juanita back on the show. Because their story and their dedication on how they got into coffee and why they got into coffee. They know coffee. I thought I knew coffee. But then you understand why it tastes like it does. So unique. So unique. RivermoonCoffee.com, Faded Black Blend. All right. Weather control. Weather control. It was so hot this weekend. It got up to, at our house, 118 degrees. Now, all around us, Glendale, Pasadena, Van Nuys, of course, Burbank, Studio City, the Valley, record high temperatures like they've never been seen. And this is what is weird. We just came off of, it was about a month ago, got up to about 105. We were complaining. And that lasted about a week, by the way. And it was hot. You know, and everybody's making those comments, you know, wow, this is Las Vegas hot. This is Phoenix hot. And it's hot. And then everything chilled out. And literally, and we went through about a month of 90, which is okay because that means, you know, 70 degrees at night. And it cools off at sunset, and it makes the evenings really, really nice. It's like perfect weather, really. But it was like Wednesday, and I turned to Rita and I said, have you seen the weather? Right? They are predicting that this weekend's going to be the hottest weekend in years, maybe 100 years. Like, it's going to last for 3 days. And it was like to the minute. My memory is Thursday night, everything cool, right? Right? We do Fade to Black, right? Okay. Laird Scranton, everything's cool. Woke up Friday morning. And we had to get started on the H Factor. And Friday morning, like 10 o'clock in the morning, it's 100 degrees. It was like, what? I mean, like hot. And it just got hotter and hotter and hotter to the point where now, and I'm talking about it was so hot here, 10 o'clock at night, 100 degrees. Okay? That Phoenix, Las Vegas thing. Hot. I had thought to myself, this is crazy. But it happened like overnight. It started overnight, and now it's ended. Today, I mean, like 3 days in and out. And I started thinking about this. Weather control. Is this weather control? Because for a lot of different reasons, But it's not just Burbank. Then I started to see the news coming out of Denver, which I spoke about earlier, and what they are going through today, going from 100 degrees to snow overnight. That just doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's happened in the past. I've never really heard it, but it's going on here and in the middle of the country in Denver. And then during all of this, where we are having these record-breaking, 118, 120, 122 degree days. I mean, hot. That this weekend is this week is record-setting cold temperatures at the same time in the same country. Now, I don't want to be, you don't even have, it's not a conspiracy thing. You just have to sit back and logically think about what is going on. I have talked about, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, either we are heating up or we're cooling down, but heating up and cooling down in the same city, in the same country, at the same time, it doesn't make any sense, does it? Weather control. I brought up, and it was 6 years ago, and this is conspiracy. I brought up, I go, and I'm doing the news here on Fade to Black. And I'm reading our local news, and I see in the local newspaper here, one of the Valley newspapers, I see this article. Funding approved for weather control stations, 7 of them in the city of Burbank. It's like, weather control? Budget's approved. Weather control. So the article said this, that there were seven cloud seeding stations being placed in the foothills of Burbank that are going to seed the clouds for rain when needed. And the budget for the chemicals to go into these 7 stations for the year was $500,000. Now, when I read the article, I thought $500,000 is kind of cheap. What, and what is the, so obviously it's not that elaborate. The seeding stations are already there, which I didn't know about. And this is just for the chemicals to go into these 7 pods. And so I read the article, and I was pretty stunned. And at the time, we were going through what we're going through now. These crazy things, these swings in weather. And I didn't understand it. Cloudy day, clear day, clear day, suddenly cloudy. Just weird things going on. But I was talking about it. And then I read the article, and you're like, well, that makes a lot of sense. Here in Southern California, we have gone through these long runs of drought. And then suddenly it rains. But when I say long runs, 5 years. Not a summer or not a winter, but we go through sometimes years of no rain, not a drop. Okay, but this is the conspiracy part. So I read the article and I post it. I read the article, I write up a story, and I read it on the air. And it was about a week later, and I got 2 or 3 emails from different people going, we're trying to cite the source of the article that you had quoted from on the air about the weather control. I said, oh, yeah, no problem. I'll send you the link. I go to the page. Article's gone. It's gone. I then searched. It's not there, right? On any media, on any outlet. And I thought to myself, this is a public information situation. We're talking about public funds $500,000 to be paid by the city of Burbank in this weather control stations in the foothills of the mountains, San Gabriel Mountains, San Fernando Mountains, and in the city of Burbank. Half is San Fernando, half is San Gabriel. It depends on what side of the mountains you are on. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The articles disappeared. I couldn't find them, and I still can't. And I have not, from time to time, every 6 months or so, I'll go and do a general search on this to see if there's anything else up there. It doesn't exist. So I was convinced at that time, and this isn't a Dane Wigington, chemtrails, cloud seeding from airplanes and things, and aluminum in the air and particulates. Some of this is about. These are fixed stations on the side of the mountain here behind our home and studio. So what do we do with that? Well, it convinced me that weather manipulation is real. The weather manipulation in the San Fernando Valley is real. It's something that is there, and it is something that is budgeted. And one thing was leaked to the public and was presented to the public and then removed from the internet. It's got to be going on all over the place. This isn't some isolated situation in Burbank. And going through what we did this weekend. Now, today, it's nice outside. Same thing in Denver going on right now. Yesterday, Rita and I went over to Rita's brother's home. It was their 35th wedding anniversary. And we went out to have a get-together, a dinner. There was maybe a half dozen of us, 10 of us. We had to eat dinner inside. We couldn't eat out by the pool, which was our plan. It was too hot. We ate dinner inside with the air conditioning, went outside, and at about 10 o'clock last night, a breeze came through, and suddenly it was nice. Today, it was like yesterday and the last 3 days didn't even happen. There's something going on. You talk to the people in Denver that went from 101 degrees on Saturday, 94 degrees today, and it's going to snow tonight? I'm just like, there you go. Weather control. All right. Tonight, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black Tonight. Peter Davenport is here from the National UFO Reporting Center. Peter's been doing this for such a long time. I'm a big fan of his. We've all been listening to him on Coast to Coast for years. He's back with us. He hasn't been on with us for like 5 years. I didn't even realize that. Done Coast with him. Oh, I'll be doing Coast this weekend, everybody, Saturday night, too, as well. So, I am your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'll be right back with Peter Davenport, kicking off UFO Week here on Fade to Black right after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game GRA, the planet. It's UFO week this week on Fade to Black. Tonight, Peter Davenport. Tomorrow night, Alejandro Rojas. Wednesday night, Kevin Estrella is going to be here. Thursday night is Fader night with open lines all night long. Tonight, our guest is Peter Davenport. And we are going to discuss the recent Nuforc UFO reports that are making headlines around the world. We're going to discuss the history of Nuforc, and we're going to also look at some very interesting cases that Peter has reported on over the years. He has been the director of the National UFO Reporting Center since, check this, 1994. In addition to being the director of the National UFO Reporting Center, Peter has served as the director of investigations for the Washington chapter of the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. Peter has had an active interest in the UFO phenomenon from his early boyhood. He experienced his first UFO sighting over the St. Louis Municipal Airport in the summer of 1954. And he investigated his first UFO case during the summer of 1965 in Exeter, New Hampshire. Peter has been a witness to several anomalous events, possibly UFO related, including a dramatic sighting over Baja California in February of 1990, and several nighttime sightings over Washington State during 1992. He received his bachelor's degrees from Stanford University, right here in California, his graduate education and MS degree from the University of Washington in Seattle, as well as an MBA degree in finance and international business from the Graduate School of Business. And his website, of course, is nuforc.org. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. I'd like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Peter Davenport. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing well, and how nice, how exciting to be back with Jimmy Church on the air. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Peter, and myself and so many millions of people have looked to you for your reporting and your reports over at Coast to Coast AM for so many years. I want to thank you for that. It's a lot of hard work. And certainly I know that you've had your ups and downs with it too as well. I remember, you're probably going to laugh now. I remember when you were getting crank called. Remember that? Remember that era? And that was horrible. And the frustration, because you're just trying to do, a service and people disrupting it. But you know what? There's always somebody out there, isn't there, Peter?
There is. It's sad. It's a sad statement about the state of the United States. I can tell you the date when the prank call started. It was the 27th of August, 2017. And I've taken probably 60,000 crank calls since then.
Oh, that is crazy.
On some days, it's tapered off, fortunately, but some days, typically between 80 and 95% of the calls were prank calls from young, rude, impudent American kids.
Yeah, and and the thing is you have to take the calls because the next call could be the one, right? And you just don't know. Yeah.
Trying to reason with these kids is like talking to a brick wall. It's really unsettling to me.
Yeah, I know. And I'm a dad, and I totally get it, man. I really do. And here's the thing, Peter, is that all of us, and this includes myself and everybody that's listening to this show tonight and over at Coast too as well, is that something personal has brought them into this community. And they are on a quest for answers and for truth, and they want to communicate and meet others. We've all got our stories, don't we? And
we sure do.
Yeah, and I want you to go. Let's go back to your first sighting that you had when you were a kid, because I think that's the one that always separates from everything else. It's the one that you probably remember the most. Take us back. What happened?
Yeah. Well, it was, I believe, 1954, although I'm not absolutely sure of the year. I say 1954 because I was in a 53 Studebaker and we had just purchased that car.
Mm-hmm.
And my father, who worked at the St. Louis airport, Lambert Field, had to work one evening. And the four of us, my father, mother, my older brother, and I, drove out to the airport. We dropped my father off on the north side of the airport. The three of us drove around to the south side to attend a drive-in theater, a movie at a drive-in theater, Airway Heights movie theater. It was very popular back in the 50s. And while we were watching a movie, it was dark, it was late at night. This is about July or August of 1954. A disturbance started brewing in the theater. We didn't know what was going on, whether it was a fight or a fire or some kind of emergency situation. And people were walking in front of our car looking up to my right. And I look out the right-hand passenger window, and there was the most crazy thing I've ever seen in my life. It was the shape of a English rugby ball, sort of generally the shape of a American football, but with blunt ends. It was blood red, and it was so bright you didn't want to look at it. And to provide a little background, my father worked in the airline industry for 41 years. And in the course of his employment, I picked up a great deal of knowledge about aircraft. As a kid, I prided myself to be able to spot and identify any aircraft. And I knew that was not a terrestrial aircraft. I'm not sure I'd ever heard the term UFO by that point, though. And suddenly, after just a few seconds of hovering off to our right, it accelerated, it shot up in the sky, it dropped down again, and disappeared behind McDonnell Aircraft Corporation. I don't think I saw that object for more than 10 seconds, Jimmy, and it determined the future that my life would take, the future path I would take. It was a very profound event in my life.
What did your dad have to say about it?
Well, he was a little upset by it. It turns out that he had finished work. He was in the control tower, which was on the north side of the airport back in those days. And it was the first thing out of his mouth when we picked him up. He was babbling about it. And we talked about it as a family all the way home, 5 miles home. And after that one experience, he did not care to talk about UFOs. And he saw it with a set of binoculars, as did all the men in the tower with him. And they couldn't figure out what it was. So it was not a terrestrial aircraft. Of that I am quite certain.
There was
It was a dramatic event.
Yeah, and you bring up one of the most solid points that we men bring up constantly. I can't say the same thing for women, but men, when we are young, when we're boys, we take pride in knowing our aircraft. Right?
Yeah.
It's just the way that it is. And it, it's books, it's magazines, it's getting excited when you see one in person and flying overhead. Oh, that's a blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter if it's airlines, commercial, passenger jets, Air Force, helicopters. We take pride in that. And when we see something that isn't part of the inventory in our brain, that is when we take note, right? We know what we can take off the checklist immediately. And it's something that is part of a boy's DNA, isn't it?
Yeah, you've summarized it really well. To this day, if I'm out walking or outdoors for any reason and an airplane passes overhead, it's almost irresistible to stop what I'm doing and look up and try to identify the plane or the carrier that's flying it. It's almost organic. I agree with your assessment.
Yes, and it's kind of competition too, right? I think I can outdo you, Peter. Right? It's part of our DNA. It's what we do. And that's when it comes to UFO sightings and seeing something in the air that you can't explain. That is, we have to. I think that testimony, that kind of eyewitness report, is just as valid as anything else out there because we know what it's not, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like cars. You see a fancy car on the road, you got to look at it. You got to try to identify it. And that's exactly the way I was, even at the age of 6.5 years. That was my nature.
Now, when 1995 came along and the idea for Nuforc, that's one thing, okay? And we're going to discuss that. But by the time 1995 came around, were you just full on? Was it MUFON? Was it research? Was it investigating? Was it the books and the videos and the documentaries? Were you fully engaged in the UFO phenomenon?
Yeah, I was director of investigations for, as you mentioned during your very nice introduction of me. I was director of investigations for the Washington State chapter of MUFON from 1993 to 95. And I was keenly interested, though, in the UFO phenomenon, even back in the 50s and 60s. Again, after that sighting of that red object over the St. Louis airport, I was hooked. And the first book I had was Anatomy of a Phenomenon by Jacques Vallée.
Mm-hmm.
Father recognized my interest in the subject of UFOs, and he saw a copy of that on the bookshelf, and he bought it. And I just consumed it in a matter of a couple days. But it's an all-encompassing all-absorbing passion, I'm afraid, with me. And until the question of what these UFOs are is resolved, I'm afraid I'm hooked.
Can we talk about Jacques Vallée for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jacques is going to be my guest. I'm leaking this out now. But he's going to be my guest this Saturday on Coast to Coast. And Jacques, a lot like yourself and others that I've had so much respect for over the years, that, you know, I've been into this now for 40 years myself, that I'm able to interview. And Jacques Vallée for this community has been a game changer. And when you go and you're reading Jacques' books versus what people are seeing in the air, in the skies, and like yourself, right, the things that you are seeing too as well, Jacques seems to me, and I've said this to him, by the way, Peter, seems to me that he knows something. There is something there about Jacques that is a confirmation of things, but it may not be what we think it is, right?
It's quite possible. I would love to meet him someday and sit down and chat. I'm quite surprised that he has more or less abandoned the ET theory, because from my vantage point, after having accumulated somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 reports, eyewitness reports, it seems logical to me to conclude that we are dealing with intelligent creatures who have built very technologically sophisticated craft, and they're visiting us on a regular basis. Jacques seems to have migrated from that original position to something. I haven't read all of his books, but he seems to be taking a different approach to the problem now.
Well, I think that his suggestions, and I want to stay on exactly your point, okay, because you make a great point here, is that Jacques is definitely leaning towards an interdimensional phenomenon, that it may not be as physical as we think. But this is my point. There must be thousands of different civilizations visiting this planet. It's not just one craft or ET from one planet or one star system. There are trillions of those. So there must be thousands of. So Jacques' view is Jacques' experience and Jacques' research of just one type. There's so many. Peter, you've done report after report after report of craft that don't resemble each other, right? I mean, it's one of those things where it's got to be thousands of different civilizations, right?
Yeah. I think in the final analysis, when we know everything about our galaxy and realize how ubiquitous life may be, we will realize that we're dealing with millions of centers of not just life, but of intelligent life. That's my suspicion.
It's just a numbers game.
Yeah, why I keep working, hoping that one of these reports will give me the answer to that question.
And when we come back after the break, I do want to talk about specifically what's going on this year and how the reports have changed over the years. But now let's go back to 1995. Was the creation of Nuforc out of National UFO Reporting Center, was that out of necessity?
Well, I actually did not found it, and it was a gentleman whose name was Robert J. Gribble, who was a member of the board on MUFON, who founded the National UFO Reporting Center in October of '74. And he argued that what we needed was a facility where we could draw all or most of the reports to one facility where we could collect the data, preserve the data, and compare the data between reports. And that was the beginning of the National UFO Reporting Center. Ironically, And I've often wondered about this, Jimmy. I arrived in Seattle just the month before Bob created the National UFO Reporting Center. I've often wondered whether there's some kind of significance to that fact. But he ran it, and he ran it marvelously well for 20 years. And one night in July of 1994, I was talking to one of the members of Washington MUFON, and he said, "Did you know, Peter, that Bob Gribble is considering shutting down the hotline?" And I thought that would be a terrible blow to ufology, because he did reports at the MUFON meetings, and he was getting some terrific data. So I made the mistake, and you'll see why I say mistake, of calling Bob Gribble. That was my next call that Friday night. And I chatted with him, and I told him that I would be perfectly willing to help with his effort to take some of the load off of his shoulders to prevent any burnout. And before I knew it, he said, "Peter, it's yours." And from that point forward, my life has not been the same as it would have been if I had not become a full-time operator of the National UFO Reporting Center.
How do you fund things?
Well, through minor donations and honoraria, and most of all out of my savings account. And I'm considering changing that here in the near future and putting a contribution button on my website so people can chip in $5 every few months or so. But I avoided that initially because I didn't want anybody thinking that I was doing this work for the money, because if we're being visited by UFOs and their presumed occupants, that is a subject of such tremendous importance, it transcends any question of the importance of monetary gain from it. So,
yeah, and it's not monetary gain, and I think everybody would understand that, because I'm asking because every time I have gone to the Nuforc website, I always took note of that. There isn't a donation button here. There isn't a membership button. There isn't a money button anywhere. There's no advertising on the page, so how are you funding it? And to say that you're doing this for the spirit and the love of the game, well, that says it all, Peter. Yeah.
Well, that's what I've been doing for the last 26 years, and I think it's time for me to change that and start inviting people to help with the finances of the operation.
Well, the second that you add that button, let us know. Right? Okay. Let us know, man. I'll get it out there on social media, and you'll be able to relax a little bit and wonder why you didn't do it earlier. So.
Yeah, you're probably right there. But another comment about Bob Gribble, I can't say enough good things about him and what he did for ufology. He had printed some blaze orange stickers that give the telephone number, and this is before website, so it doesn't include the website address, but he had 4,000 or 5,000 of those stickers printed up, and he sent out a letter to the sheriff's office of every county and parish in the United States to introduce them to his operation, and to invite them to direct any callers who claim to have seen a UFO to the hotline number, it's been the same for 46 years next month. It's area code 206-722-3000. We've had that number in continuous operation since October of 1974.
Now, we're going to take a break here in a couple of minutes, but let me ask you this. What was out of the hundreds of thousands of reports and phone calls, what's the one phone call that you think of first?
Well, the Phoenix Lights case is the biggest case that I think ufology has seen in 70 years. I always think of the Phoenix Lights event. A lot of people don't recognize just how dramatic it was. One of the objects that hovered over Indian School Road and 7th Avenue for 5 minutes was 9,000 feet above ground level at the time. It subtended an arc of about 135 degrees, people estimated, on the ground. That translates to a ship that was 8.25 miles wide from wingtip to wingtip. So that's the first case that comes to mind. One other always comes to mind when I field that question. It's a call I took from a gentleman in my home city of Seattle back in the year about 2000 or so. He talked about an incident he experienced up in Eklutna, Alaska, just east of Anchorage. He and a fellow friend of his, both of them teenagers, 18, 19 years of age, they worked in the CCC camp up there during the Depression. They hitchhiked from their camp into Anchorage one night, and they ran into a saucer. And he described it in great detail during a long telephone conversation. But that was, of course, 1936, 11 years before people started talking about UFOs, before Roswell, of course. And that was a very dramatic one.
I'll tell you a really funny little side note about the Phoenix Lights case is I was in Phoenix that night, and I was in Phoenix all week, and I got back. I was outside. I was at the Hard Rock Cafe, and I was at a record release party for a band. And we were all out on the patio. There was a few hundred people at this record release party. So anyway, I get back home to Burbank, Sherman Oaks, the next night, Friday. I get in, I turn on the TV. It's on the local news. And I'm, just doing my stuff and turning on the lights. And I hear from the TV, a UFO sighting last night in the city of Phoenix, right? And I spin around. And I'm watching this on TV, and I'm thinking to myself, Peter, I can't believe it. I was there, and I didn't look up. None of us did. I was with the band. Anyway, nobody saw. I didn't see it. I was so upset with myself. And to this day, I just regret it. It happened on a Thursday, and I flew home on Friday. Oh, by the way, Peter, you Google how to report a UFO sighting. Nuforc. That's your number one Google search. That's what pops up first.
Well, I haven't done that in a long time.
You're at the top, man.
That's gratifying.
You're at the top. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center. More with Peter after this short break. It's night one of UFO Week, which is every week on Fade to Black, by the way. Peter Davenport. I'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to forbiddenknowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, forbiddenknowledge.tv. Again, visit forbiddenknowledge.tv today.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of fade to black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We are also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Peter Davenport. UFO Week here on Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, Alejandro Rojas. Wednesday night, Kevin Estrella is here from the band Pyramids on Mars. Tonight, it's Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center. And, okay, Peter, this is going to be an interesting discussion here. The year of 2020 has been strange. There's no question about it. And I know that so many more people have time on their hands, right? We have time on our hands and spending a lot of time on the internet, watching movies from home, entertainment from home, sports from home. Everything has shifted gears. But with this spare time, I would think, and I've been making these comments all year, that people are looking to the skies more because they've got spare time where they didn't have it before. I read the report in the Wall Street Journal about Nuforc and the numbers, and it was an interesting article, which obviously is one of the reasons why I called you. I wanted your insight on it. Do you think that the numbers are different this year with reports on UFOs?
Well, the numbers are different. It's a question of what the numbers mean, though. I did report to that journalist, and by the way, she did a wonderful job of writing that article, I thought. It was very accurate, and she got right to the heart of the matter. But the likelihood that a person is going to see a UFO is very difficult to calculate. I don't know that the fact that people are home would make a big difference, because when they're home, they're usually indoors. So they wouldn't have a clear view of the daytime or nighttime sky. It's hard for me to say. It's intriguing to consider the possibility that the coronavirus has given rise to more UFO sightings, but I can't certify that that's the case. There's so many variables, so many factors involved in that calculus.
Well, one of the specific numbers, I mean, it got down to months, right? And the percentage of increase versus 2019. I specifically want to address that. Was this something that she extrapolated, or was this something that you had actually stated?
Well, we talked about the significance of the volume of reports. One of the factors that's played a major role in the number of reports this year has been the so-called Starlink satellites. I'm sure you've seen them.
Yes.
A lot of people are reporting them. Even to this day, the word hasn't gotten out to everybody yet. People are reporting the long string of satellites, star-like objects that are passing overhead, flying in the same pathway across the night sky. That's served to affect the number of reports, but of course those are not genuine UFO reports.
Is this is this part of your okay, when you say UFO reports and we are talking about numbers of reports, are those numbers of Starlink included in because it's just a de facto UFO sighting that came in on the hotline, or is this not part of your UFO numbers?
They're included in our reports, and I include Starlink satellite reports, but I qualify them with a comment that there's probably a Starlink satellite sighting. But I include them. I can never be sure, Jimmy. When somebody calls you on the telephone and says they've seen a UFO, it's very difficult to establish whether it's actually a UFO or not. But I include those reports because it allows other people who may have seen something who haven't reported it yet to see that report and realize that it was probably a Starlink cluster of Starlink satellites that they saw. So ultimately, I'll probably take those reports out of the database, but I've elected to leave them in just because I feel it's, so long as they're properly qualified and identified for what they are, it's potentially useful to somebody visiting our site
now
to see how
right
the reports have been.
Yeah, exactly. And so for you, have you been able to get a feel by looking at the numbers, you know, what is Starlink and what isn't, and then get a general idea about the number of reports and sightings that have been happening in 2020? Has there been an increase over 2019?
I think there has been, but whether it's a statistically significant increase is very difficult for me to be able to say. It would take a great deal of work that I don't have time to do to determine which of the reports is likely a genuine UFO, and then do statistical analysis only on those reports to see if there's a fluctuation in quantity or not. But the issue of quantity of reports, number of reports per month, is not quite as interesting to me as the type of reports I've been getting.
Exactly.
It used to be, when I took over this position as director, that the majority of reports we've gotten, and many others have commented on this point with respect to their data and their work, most of the reports used to be about distant, tiny lights in the night sky, usually in the night sky. But that's no longer the case, it appears to me. People are reporting palpable, honest-to-gosh craft that are streaking overhead in the night sky, oftentimes unlighted, no lights on them at all. And that waves a red flag. If somebody tells me he saw an object streak over his head and it did not have red or green or white lights on it, they have my interest immediately.
What about daytime sightings?
Yeah, there have been a lot of those too. That's one of the things I was going to lead into, is people are having daytime sightings of, again, palpable craft, objects. Some of them, I believe, are high-altitude balloons, helium-filled balloons that are being launched by Google and DARPA, but not all of them. And people are seeing really bizarre craft that can't be ascribed to any other kind of explanation, in my opinion, other than the UFO explanation.
Yeah, nighttime sightings are fun. I've done a lot of, I've got night vision goggles and things, and I enjoy doing that, going out with groups of people. That's fun. But the daytime sighting, to me, is the holy grail stuff, because now you can actually see the craft. At night, it's a guessing game. It's a lot of fun, but when you have a bona fide, like we were talking about earlier, being a kid, right? Daytime sighting, you can look at what you're looking at. You can see what you're looking at and positively identify it as something terrestrial or something that you just can't explain. And if we have an increase of daytime sightings, then that says something, Peter.
Yep, I agree.
There's some. I want to jump in, and I know that I just interrupted you, but this is 2020, Peter. I would think that if you were going to check out planet Earth, this is a pretty good year if you're ET to come and to check us out.
Yeah.
But think about the ET side. They're probably going, man, I just came from Earth. You don't want to go and check it out right now. It's kind of crazy, right? Maybe it's that, and maybe we could actually see a decrease. I don't know. Which version do you think may be true? Do you think ET is interested in the pandemic and the social aspects of how we're dealing with it? Is that something ET would want to observe?
I suspect it would be observe, and I hope not participate in. We still don't know where this virus came from for sure,
right?
In my opinion. And if ET is involved in a creation of a virus that has such a profound effect on the human population on this planet, that is a worrisome proposition. It has crossed my mind more than once.
Sure.
That we should be devoting a lot of effort to trying to explain where this virus came from.
Leave that
up to the scientists.
That's right. About 2 years ago, this strange press release came out. I reported it on this show, and then I didn't hear anything else about it. But the press release was that on the ISS, the International Space Station, they found a strange bacteria growing on the outside of the space station. Now,
I saw that report.
Right. Now, wait a minute, right? In the temperature of space, which is really cold, or in direct sunlight, it's really hot. But there aren't things like oxygen, right? There isn't an atmosphere or anything that would facilitate growth. You wouldn't think. But if you've got a bizarre bacteria that is able to live in space and grow and reproduce on the outside of the International Space Station, that is something that we should know about. And the report just died. And then we have coronavirus 2 years later.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
I used to work in the Soviet Union back in the late 1970s, and there was a similar outbreak. I can pinpoint the date. I think it was the 1st of April 1979 when the Soviets' anthrax factory blew up. It blew its roof off, and a big yellow cloud floated out, reportedly, and all of this is on the internet. A big yellow cloud floated out of their factory where they were producing weaponized anthrax. Without a doubt, they were caught red-handed with it. And the Soviets went berserk trying to control the spread of that disease. So the take-home lesson here is that superpowers at least, and perhaps other countries as well, are producing weaponized microbes. And I hope they're not being used, but you can't be sure. And I suspect our intelligence agencies are burning the midnight oil trying to answer that question as to whether this coronavirus was manufactured artificially and then released either intentionally or unintentionally.
As the data is coming in this year as well, obviously the United States is always up there with the highest amount of sightings. But are we starting to see data come in from around the world too as well? Have you seen an increase on other parts of the planet?
If I've experienced an increase from places like Canada or Europe or Asia or Africa, I'm not aware of it. But I don't have the time to really look at that information in any kind of meaningful, statistically tight fashion. It could well be the case. It could also be the case that I'm getting reports from other countries simply because I'm becoming more well-known in those areas.
Sure. Well, you're the number one Google search, so you got to always remember that. The types of craft I have seen them change from decade to decade, going back to the late 40s, what was happening in the 50s and the late 50s and then the 60s and late 60s and 70s. The types of craft have changed. And do you must see the exact same thing. What did you see most with MUFON and Nuforc back in the early days, in the 80s and early 90s?
Well, most of what we saw were lights in the sky, or usually discs if people were reporting an out-and-out tangible craft. But some very nice work, elegant work, was done by Dave Marler from Albuquerque, who used to be state director of MUFON for Illinois when I first met him. He did an analysis of Nuforc's data and I think MUFON's data as well, and he discovered, to the amazement of all of us, that 2/3, I think the figure he cites is 2/3 of all the sightings, legitimate sightings, have to do with triangular-shaped craft. So it's a wonder we didn't come up with the term flying triangle as opposed to flying saucer. But I'm astonished. You mentioned this earlier in the program, the diversity of craft that are reported by reliable, seemingly qualified witnesses is just breathtaking. Anywhere from egg-shaped craft to just circles, discs, spheres, wedge-shaped craft, triangles. It's an amazing accumulation of different types of things that people are seeing that apparently cannot be ascribed to terrestrial aircraft. I'm just awestruck by the nature of the data I'm handling.
And did the triangle reporting see the greatest numbers through the 90s and early 2000s?
Well, that's what Dave Marler's data suggests. I haven't looked at it closely enough to be able to certify that I would agree with that, but he's a meticulously careful investigator, and if he says it's the case, I suspect he's got the data to back it up. So.
And how have they changed throughout the 2000s? What's the most frequent report?
The most frequent report now is clusters, usually of red, orange, yellow, amber, or gold lights. And I sent you a couple of cases earlier today. You may get a follow-up message from me, but I can pin down the exact date when it occurred. It was late May of 2012. I started receiving frequent reports of clusters of these red, orange, or yellow lights. And one of the first ones was from St. Louis, the 1st of June, 2012. A police officer was driving south out of St. Louis with his wife and their infant child. They were going south on Interstate 55, I believe it was, and he looked off to his quartering right to the southwest, and he saw a cluster of orange lights streaking across the sky from his right to left in front of him. And he was an excellent witness, and he was badly shaken by what he saw. In fact, shortly after his sighting, he had to stop his car, put on his police uniform, police hat, figuratively speaking, and assist with a very serious automobile accident, which he thinks was caused by the objects being sighted by that car's driver that was involved in the accident. Something very similar was seen the next night, the 2nd of June, again, 2012, and all of these reports should be on our website for people to read if they wish to do so. 4 groups of women saw 2 clusters of orange lights just east of Portland on the north shore of the Columbia River. Beacon Rock State Park is where it occurred. And I've been getting gobs and gobs of reports like that. One other report I'll cite, because it's particularly, well, maybe 2. The 6th of July, 2013. So this phenomenon had been taking place for about a year at this point. An ex-U.S. astronaut from Athens, Texas, saw a cluster of these objects go over his head and the head of his wife. He and I had several conversations. He saw a cluster of 3 red lights followed by another cluster, and a fourth, I think. He said, "Peter, I don't know what those objects were, but he said, there's one thing I can assure you. They were not manufactured on our planet." That's a pretty bold statement for an American astronaut to be making.
The list that you sent me, one of the lists, I should say, and I went through them, and I'm still going through them. It's some of the most fascinating reading that I have ever seen, and I don't know how many reports you have sent me, Peter, but let's see here. All the way through February of 2020, these are handpicked, everybody, from Peter. But 1965, 1994, 1994, 1990, all the way up through the 2020s. And I'm reading the witness descriptions of this, and there's nothing else. There isn't another conclusion to come to when you look at this, because this is hundreds. I mean, this is hundreds of thousands of reports that you have. But all this says is there is something going on in the skies. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Jimmy. And if there's one thing I guess two things that keep me working and moving forward at this very difficult job, it's what you just said. Something that's taking place, and all humanity may be at risk as far as we know. And it's imperative that we get this information as quickly and accurately as we can, and most of all, get it out to the American people as quickly as we can as well. And that underscores the value and the importance of the many fine programs you do on the subject of ufology. I don't know where we would be if we didn't have broadcasters like you allowing us UFO investigators good, high-quality airtime to share our data with a large number of listeners. It's very important. Obviously, the newspapers aren't going to do very much, or they haven't until maybe just recently.
Well, and the reason for it, Peter, obviously I have an interest, but things have happened for me personally, where things that I can't explain. Steve Murillo from MUFON. And Steve was director of MUFON here in Southern California, Los Angeles, for 13 years. A Marine Corps fighter pilot, graduated from the Naval Academy, pilot. Very sharp gentleman. He knows what's going on. And the two of us, along with 20 or 30 other people, we were all together up in Washington, not too far from you. And in the middle of the day, 3:00 in the afternoon, Peter, this ginormous, and I'm going to guess here, 500-foot tall, spinning, it looked like a beer can, a black, tall, cylindrical shape, but it was vertical. It wasn't horizontal. It was vertical, and it's turning and going across the sky, blue sky, sun reflecting off of this, and it's spinning. And we're freaking out. We thought it was slow, and we thought that we were going to watch this for an hour because we had the big, vast, open Washington sky in front of us. It phased out. Right? And it just, and Steve, you should hear Steve in the video. It disappeared. And I was like, what? And I looked again, and it was gone. Just gone from the open sky.
Did you ever determine what it was?
No. And so that's why I'm here, Peter. It's things like that. It's your sighting in 1954. It's things like that with Steve Murillo. And what do we have with something like that? We've got to figure out what's going on. I can tell you, with my boyhood knowledge of the F-104 Starfighter and everything else that I know and love about aircraft, that wasn't anything that I've ever seen before. That thing was incredible. Peter, let's take a break. We will continue all of this when we come back. Our guest, Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center. It's night one of UFO Week here on Fade to Black. More with Peter when we come back. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
Including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Peter Davenport, the National UFO Reporting Center. Such an honor and a privilege, Peter, to have you with us tonight, and everybody out there listening. It's just great. Your knowledge and what you bring to the table for this community, I just can't imagine. And I thought that I've done a lot of research, but especially going through this list and just thinking to myself, This is just a partial day of the life of Peter Davenport. It's just just incredible.
Well, thanks for the kind words. They go a long way in ufology, and it's absolutely a delight to work with you, Jimmy. You're just a wonderful host and gracious, and I'll work with you anytime.
Well, you know what? One of the coolest days of my life was the day that George called, and he said, Jimmy, listen. If it's okay, I'd like for you to have Peter Davenport on Coast to Coast this weekend. I said, dude, are you kidding me? Somebody pinch me.
Clearly.
Yeah.
That was delightful to be on that program with you.
That was great. Now, this is what I want to do. I want to pick the brain of Peter Davenport. There are, and I'm asked this question all the time, so I'm going to ask this question of you. Well, people come up to me and go, Jimmy, what's the one case? Jimmy, what's the one? What's your list? I'm gonna do that with you right now. If there was one case that you don't think gets enough attention, what case would that be?
Yeah, well, one comes to mind immediately, and I'm looking at it on my list. It's an incident that occurred in Meriwether County, Georgia, April 13th, 2003. 3 adults, 2 brothers and the wife of one of the brothers, were driving on a rural highway in Georgia. Again, this is Meriwether County, Georgia. And the driver looked in his rearview mirror, Jimmy, and he saw a bunch of flashing lights. And I don't know for sure what color he saw, but I think they were orange lights. And his first reaction was that he was being pulled over by a law enforcement, a cruiser.
Okay.
So he turned on his signal and pulled off, and then he realized that those lights were not part of a cruiser, not part of a flasher bar, but they were individual lights, and now they were inside his vehicle. And it was a whole bunch of orange lights about the size of somewhere between an acorn and a walnut swirling inside his vehicle. And here's where it gets very interesting. Not only did they get inside the vehicle, all the windows were closed, but I believe the driver, if I'm not mistaken, had recently had a colostomy, so he still had a surgical scar. And at one point during this brief interlude, several of the objects, maybe many of them, I don't know the exact number, coalesced and gravitated to the area of his abdomen directly over the colostomy. In other words, those objects understood, they knew that he had had a colostomy, and they were interested in it. And that case can be, I'm sure it's still posted to our website, April 13th, 2003 at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. It was dark.
Did you have a chance to interview?
Oh, I interviewed all three of them.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions here. That doesn't sound like a fun experience. That almost sounds frightening. How did it affect them?
Well, they didn't express particular fear. As I recall, I interviewed all three of them shortly after the event had occurred. They weren't terrified. They were more amused and baffled and shocked by it, but they didn't, as I remember, they didn't express fear. The reason I dare cite this case, as bizarre as it is the state director of MUFON. I called him and recommended that he investigate this one. He interviewed all three, as I remember, and his impression after the interviews, his impression was that they were every bit as reliable witnesses as I felt they were. I've forgotten the investigator's name. I'm embarrassed, but he was impressed with the quality of the witnesses and the quality of the incident.
So they were not afraid. So the lights didn't pose. They didn't feel that they weren't threatened.
They didn't express threat, express a feeling of being threatened. No, as I remember. But bear in mind, this is all 17 years ago.
Right, and do you remember how it concluded? Did the lights then exit the vehicle and they just continued their drive?
I'm sorry I interrupted you. They just suddenly disappeared. And how that can take place, I have no idea. But it was, in my opinion, a solid case. And the MUFON state director felt the same way about it. It tells us that there's a great deal about this phenomenon that we're not aware of, and a great deal about alien intelligence and its relationship to mankind that we know absolutely nothing about. We're only just beginning to awaken to it.
I talk about Rendlesham a lot, and of course Travis Walton and sure. Pascagoula and Calvin Parker. These are all recent cases, and we are able to, interview these witnesses today. And there is a part of it, because we always go back to Roswell, or we talk about things that that we may or may not be able to get to it's like ancient history. It's 70 years ago, but it's recent history, but it's not as current as other cases that should be out there right now and discussed. But that's part of my list of important cases. And what about you? Do you have the same type of list, or am I missing something?
Yeah, I'm sure I do. A mental list, anyway. I ruminate on these cases all the time, and the list of some of the better cases that I sent you, I frequently refer to because I just can't get them out of my mind. They're unresolved, and they're very important, I feel.
And
they tell us a great deal about our relationship to this UFO phenomenon, whatever it may be.
And you sent me, I talked about this a few years ago. It's probably 5 or 6 years ago here on Fade to Black, which is the case of Todd Seas.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and for most of the listeners out there, this is one of it's two things. It's two things. It's the most documented and undocumented case, right? Like of all time. It's very strange because we have all of the official information, and then we have the other lack of investigation and the lack of document. It's a very strange situation here with Todd Seas.
Yeah, it really is. The thing that really stands out, though, is that the public officials, the public servants who were involved with it, police investigators and the coroner of Northumberland County, refused to talk about it. In fact, they threatened, not they, at least one of these parties I just cited, threatened to arrest one investigator if he persisted. He said he shouldn't be investigating that case, which is a rather cheeky comment to make for a law enforcement officer. But I agree, it's a very interesting case, and I've actually discussed this case briefly with David Paulides. I heard him on Coast one night, and the Todd Seas case came to mind immediately, since he was missing for some 40 hours after he was seen being taken up into a saucer, allegedly.
Right.
But I can describe it for the benefit of some of our listeners who may not know the case.
Yeah, let's get into this a little bit. It's one of the most fascinating cases out there. But
yeah, I agree.
But let me read this to the audience because you wouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it for you. Which is this: okay. On Wednesday, August 28th of 2002, the National UFO Reporting Center, Nuforc, received a brief one-paragraph report criticizing our center for not having covered an alleged alien abduction, which the source of the note asserted had occurred in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Even though the report did not appear to be either serious or carefully prepared, we responded nevertheless, requesting more information from the anonymous source. The individual responded via email describing the death of Mr. Todd Seas. So let's start there. So you were brought into this. Who was Todd Seas?
Todd Seas was a young fellow. I think he was 39 at the time of his alleged abduction. He had a family, had an 18-year-old son, had a wife, and I've forgotten what his trade was. He had a local job. He was a steady worker. And one Sunday morning, August 4th, he decided to go up to his family property on Mount Montour, which is one of the higher mountains in the state of Pennsylvania, I understand, to, I believe, scout out populations of deer in preparation for the upcoming Pennsylvania deer season. Well, he was heard leaving his home at 5 o'clock in the morning on an all-terrain vehicle, ATV, and he apparently drove the 2 or 3 miles up to the family property, which had, I believe, been in his family for several generations of the Seas. Well, at 5:30 that morning, it is alleged, 4 witnesses, 4 trout fishermen, who were floating down the Susquehanna River that courses around the base of the Mount Montour, saw a man's body clad only in T-shirt and shorts being floated up what appeared to them to be a shaft of light into the bottom of a disc that was hovering above the top of the mountain. Now, unfortunately, this is information that came from only one witness, and we were unable to get in touch with the other witnesses. But later that morning, when Todd Sees had not returned home at the time he told his wife he would be there, she requested that their teenage son go up and find out why Dad's running late. So he went up, and he was confronted with a very unsettling scene. His father's, what he assumed was his father's outer garments, trousers, field trousers, and jacket, were neatly folded and lying on the back of his all-terrain vehicle. What troubled the son most of all, though, is he saw what he perceived to be his father's boot, one or two perhaps, I don't know which, hanging high in a tree, perhaps 40 or 60 feet off the ground. That troubled him. So he went back to his parents' home, apprised his mother of what he had discovered up there, and she was alarmed, so she contacted the local police. And in the final analysis, a search party was assembled very quickly, amounting to approximately 200 searchers, with helicopters, with motorized vehicles, on horseback, on foot. They had divers, scuba divers, to check the local bodies of water. And they could not find him and quit the search later that Sunday night at dark. Well, they reconvened the next morning, Monday morning, the 5th of August now, I believe it is, and continued the search all Monday, and they still didn't find him until Monday evening. The son, who had discovered his father's clothing and boot tangled in the tree, was searching around the family home, and he, to his great consternation and I don't know what to call it, he discovered human remains hanging in either heavy underbrush or a tree. And they summoned the police. The police cordoned off the area, of course, and they removed the remains. I think they established very quickly that it was the remains of Todd Sees, but it was not all that easy to do, allegedly, because the remains were so grossly mutilated, it was difficult to positively identify him. The remains were allegedly taken to a local hospital where several physicians and nurses were witness to the decedent's body, which was very quickly taken possession of by the local coroner of Northumberland County, James Kelly. I talked to Coroner Kelly probably in late August. This is now 2 or 3 weeks after the incident had occurred. I knew nothing about it until several weeks after the incident. I called James Kelly and asked him whether a death had occurred, and he said yes. I asked him whether it was a homicide or a natural death, and I don't remember his answer to that, but I asked him whether photographs had been taken of the decedent's remains during autopsy, and he said yes, photos were taken, but I would never see them myself, and they would never be issued publicly, which I thought was a very unusual statement for a public servant to make, knowing that these are matters of public record. So that's in a nutshell, that's a Todd Sees story, and to the best of my knowledge, it has not been resolved to this day.
No, it hasn't. And I want to stay back on that timeline because the early August dates have been established from his son and wife, and the neighbors that heard him leave on his ATV early in the morning, right? So that's been established. You came into the picture in September, so about 3 weeks later, right?
Well, I came in mid to late August. I had posted the one report we'd received, and I apparently had not paid close attention to it because when I received a hostile email about in late May of that year, I had to go back and look at the case because I had not noted it at the time when I posted it. So I really was not aware of the case until late May.
So,
or I'm saying late August.
Late August.
May,
Yeah.
August.
If you knew about it in May, you are good. but anyway,
not that good, Jimmy.
But staying on this timeline, the reason why I think this is important here is that you weren't hearing this second and third hand. You were calling the police department. You were speaking with the sergeant that was investigating the case. You spoke to the coroner. And immediately after all of this happened, 3 weeks is nothing. And so, when you get into late August, first week of September, this is a case that is active, and the local police do not want to talk to you about it. The coroner doesn't want to talk to you about it. There is obviously something going on, and one of the key things here is that either it's a murder, or they've got a wild animal on the loose, or they've got UFOs abducting humans, right? Something is going on. There were there were a lot of reports of lights in the skies and things that were happening on and around that same date. But his body, his clothes, his boots, all separated from, by the way, in an area that he knew intimately well. This is where he lived. That's the first thing. He did this venture out on the ATV all the time, and his body was found what appeared to be deliberately hidden. And that was a key. An animal wouldn't do that, is what I'm saying, right? An animal wouldn't do that. But why do you think that the local police and the coroner were withholding not only information, but were unwilling to discuss the case at all?
Yeah, therein lies the rub. That is what really intrigued me initially. I might not have focused on this case if it hadn't been for my conversation with the coroner, James Kelly, because he was clearly very uncomfortable in talking with me, and he was trying to get me off the phone, I felt, as quickly as possible. But when he said that the photographs of the decedent's remains taken at autopsy would never be published or never be available publicly, that was a red flag, in my opinion.
And the other thing, Todd taking off his clothes and folding them up and then going for a jog in the nude, it just doesn't make any sense, right? And
doesn't make any sense at all.
No, and I'm reading. This is from the original report that you. Let me actually get the date on this. You published this September 30th, 2002. This is the original report. You've got an update here from 2005. But what I really appreciate from this is this was written fresh, right? You're obviously going to forget details, but the details that are written here are exactly as they happened. This is the report from 2002. Now, this is what you say here concerning that date in September 5th, I believe, is the date. You say here, Peter, that same day, Nuforc telephoned the office of Mr. James Kelly, county coroner for Northumberland County, hoping to obtain more information about the cause of the victim's death. In a conversation several days later, Mr. Kelly apprised us that the death had occurred and that he had performed the autopsy on the victim, that no cause of death had been established, and that photographs had been taken of the victim's remains during autopsy. He added that the autopsy photographs are never released. Mr. Kelly, like Sergeant Cotner, the investigating officer, made it clear that he would not discuss the case in any detail. Now, those are your words as you did this report back in 2002.
Yeah, and that's my recollection. And one thing I would add to my summary of 2000 September, was it 2002 or 2004? I've forgotten.
No, this was 2002, and then you updated the report in 2005.
Yeah. The one thing that really concerned me or caught my attention was that when Coroner Kelly told me that the photographs would never be released, I asked him whether they could be released to another coroner, and he said never. So that's unusual to not allow another coroner to take part in an investigation.
Well, especially if you can't determine a cause of death, bring in somebody else.
Absolutely.
And in all of your years on this planet, okay, I'm about to go around 57 years here next month. All right, my 57th year on this planet. One of the things that coroners do is they give a cause of death. There's something on that death certificate, right? How often do you hear a coroner say, and especially a case like this, that there's no cause of death that has been established? Well, he had a badly mutilated body. Maybe he bled out, right? I mean, there's a cause of death there.
Absolutely. And the cause of death was released many weeks later. I think maybe as long as 6 weeks after the death. And the official cause of death was drug toxicity. They didn't say whether it was illegal drugs or prescription drugs, just drug toxicity. That's as detailed as the report ever got, to the best of my knowledge. That's very unusual.
And why do you think that there wasn't a heavy amount of A, local coverage, and B, another journalist that wanted to get to the bottom of this case, and why didn't this grab national headlines?
Yeah. Well, it didn't grab national headlines, but despite my efforts to call this case to the attention of several major newspapers, New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, which is well known for its investigative ability and desire to investigate mysteries like this, I couldn't even get MUFON interested in it. I telephoned the Eastern Regional Director and telephoned the State Director for Pennsylvania. I've forgotten his name now, and they had other things cooking. They couldn't handle the case when I called them. And I was desperate to get anybody interested who could go on site and start investigating in person, but I was unsuccessful in doing so.
It's one of the most fascinating cases, period, and still completely unsolved. We need to take a break right here, Peter. Stay right there. This is Fade to Black, night one of our UFO week. Here on Fade to Black, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Peter Davenport. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about what maybe we can do right now to go and see what is going on in the skies. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to GetTheT.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's GetTheT.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend. Let's face it, you've always wanted to do a sky watch and see your first UFO. Today, it's easy. Just get your own HP7 3B Cobalt Jimmy Church Edition night vision goggles from Hoffman's Optics. This is the same U.S. military system that I use, featuring a Generation 3 blue phosphor image tube. That's right, it's blue, not black and green. This is the only blue system in the world, and it's waterproof, lightweight, combat-proof, simple to use, and ready to go. Hoffman's Optics help create night vision sky watches, and now you can see what everyone has been talking about each night from your own backyard. Just call 760-231-9929. That's 760-231-9929. You can click on the banners on our site or visit UFONightVisionGoggles.com. That's UFONightVisionGoggles.com. Go back, Lee Tepe.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer, Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. What a great night, great conversation. Peter Davenport of the National UFO Reporting Center is with us. Tomorrow night, Alejandro Rojas right here. And then Wednesday night, Kevin Estrella is going to be here from Pyramid on Mars. And I just wanted to say, I don't know if you guys are watching me on the cameras really quick. I want to say really quick. I don't know if you comment. That white Stratocaster hanging on the wall, that one right there. I need to play that guitar more. I just played that during the break. That thing is sick. I play all of these hot rodded guitars. That one is old school. Peter, sorry about that. I had to talk a little guitar really quick. You know what's great? My studio here, Peter, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of it, but I'm surrounded by guitars and UFOs and skulls, right? That's my studio. It's all the things that I love. And so during the commercial breaks, I'll pull something down and strum it a little bit. And I don't have enough time to play anymore, but I do get to play during the commercial breaks. Now, this is one of the most interesting times that we have found ourselves in ufology in a very long time. And certainly we have had our peaks and valleys over the last 70 years. But right now, things are being talked about in the media. And it seems to be from one direction, but it doesn't matter to me. It's out there, and UFOs are being talked about like every single day in the national news. But I don't think that we are doing enough ourselves as citizens, and we shouldn't be depending on Washington, D.C. to lead us to disclosure. One of the things that you have proposed is passive radar detection for UFOs. And this is a very interesting subject. And one of the things, and if you don't mind, I want to go deep into this isn't an infrastructure we need to build. It's already there, isn't it?
It is, Jimmy, and thank you very much for allowing me to talk about this subject tonight. I'll tell a little story about how I came to realize how we have the solution in hand for the UFO subject. Back in January of 1995, this is just 4 or 5 months after I'd taken over the hotline, I was in a panic state because when I consented to take responsibility for the hotline and the National UFO Reporting Center, I asked myself, well, how many calls could I possibly be handling in a day? And I assumed that I might be handling maybe 1 or 2 or 3 calls per week from people who thought they'd seen UFOs. I was pretty naive looking back on it. And shortly after I took it over, I was taking 1 or 2 or 3 dozen calls per day.
That's crazy.
And I realized that it was taking all of my time, and I was panicked. I had other things to do, I felt. Well, I was thinking about this in January of 1995 again, and I realized that before I had become director of the National UFO Reporting Center, I had worked in the venture investment industry. And our company was approached by a company in Kent, Washington. It's called Meteor Communications Corporation, that made their living by bouncing signals off of the hot ionized trails behind meteors, and that are useful for bouncing a radio signal off of. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that if they could detect meteors, why couldn't they detect something else? And I quickly contacted the company and had an interview and proposed to them my realization as to how that technology could be used. They were very cordial and very, very considerate. And I've been trying to raise money ever since that realization, Jimmy. I've talked to 5 billionaires, talked with or communicated with, one way or another, 5 billionaires who could easily fund the development of a passive radar system. What passive radar relies on, the passive implies that you're not generating a transmitted signal. You're using somebody else's generated signal and listening for reflections of that signal off solid objects in the atmosphere or beyond. And
well, how does that work? Explain how that works. We hear active and passive radar, all the time. And active makes a lot of sense. You're firing up, you're trying to bounce something off, and you're the originator, right? That's that. Yeah. But explain how passive actually works.
Passive radar does not have a transmitter. It only has a receiver. And what you do is tune your receiver, which is a long distance away from the transmitter. So under ordinary circumstances, the receiver is unable to hear the transmitted signal. For example, I reside in eastern Washington state, and there's a range of mountains, the Cascade Mountains, between me and Seattle. If I set up a receiver with an array of antennas, you need more than one antenna for triangulation purposes, and tune my receiver to the operating frequency of a commercial radio or television station. Under ordinary circumstances, I would not be able to hear that signal. However, if something flies down the spine of the Cascade Mountains, above the Cascade Mountains, or anywhere in the airspace between the receiver and the transmitter, it would serve as a reflection point for the transmitted radio or television program, and my receiver would be able to pick it up. And if you have an array of antennas in an XY coordinate system, you can then triangulate through application of computer technology and other technology as well, signals analysis. You can detect that reflection point and you can track it. You can determine its velocity, its location, to a degree its size and the nature of its surface. And the reason I'm so confident in my proposal is when I was invited by John, this international director of MUFON, I can't think of his last name suddenly, I was invited to speak at the MUFON Symposium in July of 2004. And I decided that I was going to do something radically different from just citing UFO cases. So I wrote a paper on the use of passive radar for detecting UFOs, and it was published on the 6th of July, 2004, in the proceedings of the upcoming conference. Well, to my great amazement, that afternoon, the very afternoon that my article was published, I got a call from a senior officer at the Central Intelligence Agency.
Is that right?
He's very, very well known to the UFO community, and he said, "Peter, my name is so-and-so. You don't know me, but I know you and I know of your work." He said, "A retired colleague of mine just directed me to your paper that you wrote for the upcoming MUFON Symposium. And he said, I'm calling to congratulate you on your line of reasoning and to tell you that if you build the system you describe in your paper, you will be successful in answering the question of whether UFOs are real or not. Please note that he did not say you will detect UFOs. That might have had him violating a security oath. But he said you will be successful in answering the question of whether UFOs exist or not. We had a very nice conversation. He's a very nice guy. We've had a number of exchanged email on a number of occasions since that first introduction. But he explained that he had a PhD in physics, and that his first 20 years at the CIA were dedicated to building passive radar systems for the clandestine detection of targets. That's pretty heady stuff. I was thrilled by his call and thrilled by his response to my paper, of course.
So what would be the next step in a project like this? Because it sounds to me like we have the infrastructure already built all the way across this country. Every small town in America has got a local TV or radio station.
Absolutely. We could cover the entire North American continent, and I address this issue in my paper, which is posted to my website, by the way. It's on the homepage. We could cover the entire North American continent, Canada and the United States, with 4 or maybe as many as 6 stations, listening posts. And one thing I'd like to add to my rambling description of passive radar is it's not a new technology by any means. The first patent for the application of passive radar was issued in the UK in 1927. In fact, the use of the BBC radio signal is a form of for detecting aircraft during the Blitz and during the Second World War is one of the first major applications of passive radar. The signal was broadcast and it reflected off aircraft, either incoming or English aircraft looking for targets, and they were then directed, the English pilots were directed towards the appropriate targets. But one other thing I would add, the Naval Space Surveillance System, which was first introduced, I believe, in the early 1950s or perhaps as late as the early 1960s, during the Sputnik era anyway, the U.S. Navy was assigned the responsibility for tracking all objects in orbit that passed over the United States. And the way they did it was by using a passive radar system. They generated an intensely powerful radio wave, and they radiated it using special antennas to compress the radio signal into a small area. And any time an object, whether it be a satellite or a booster or an astronaut's glove or a wrench, passed through that signal, that concentrated electromagnetic energy, it would reflect the signal back down to ground level, and listening posts all along this transmitter could detect and record the reflected signal and track the object. This is how they keep satellites from bumping into one another up there. Well, the U.S. Navy was using passive radar for decades until 3 or 4 years ago when they stopped using their system. And God only knows how many UFOs were seen and detected by the U.S. Navy during the roughly half century that they were operating it.
Yeah, I'm posting your paper now up on Twitter for everybody to go and check it out. There you go, everyone. It's right there in the F2B feed in the sandbox, and you can go and check out the original paper Peter wrote for MUFON for the symposium. This is the thing, Peter, you've spoken about this publicly. You've done it on radio. You did it on Coast to Coast. You spoke about it at the MUFON Symposium. You were contacted by individuals, and you've spoken to a few money people out there. But it hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves. What do you think is going on?
I don't know. You have touched on what is the source of my greatest frustration in ufology. I solved the problem. We can detect UFOs when they're in the proximity of the planet Earth. In fact, I calculated that using the Naval Space Surveillance System transmitted signal, we could probably detect a UFO out as far as the distance of the moon is from the Earth, 234,000 miles. And people have talked about the system, but it hasn't been funded. I have yet to collect the first penny of contribution for funding this program. And originally, I assembled an engineering team, and the chief engineer is a longtime good friend of mine, electrical engineer. And he was very excited about the project too. But we calculated that it would cost perhaps as much as $750,000 to build the prototype. 90% of that would be for writing the code. It's going to take about 2 million lines of code to operate the system.
Sure.
But the cost has dropped dramatically to, we estimate it can be done, a prototype can be built for $250,000.
Now, once exactly. And once the code is written, right, you have the software, then that software would just go into the passive radar locations across the country, and they would just be loading it onto their local computer. There isn't, and then the communication would happen throughout the internet after that. So there isn't really any hardware to do. It is just the willingness of the participants, right?
Yep. All you need is a computer monitor, an FM radio receiver. FM is better than AM for certain technical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And a very accurate time measuring device. The time signal for the from satellites is perfectly adequate for our application.
Well, there's a carrier signal throughout the internet of the time of day anyway, and that's just writing that into the code too. So you would be able to triangulate a location, establish airspeed and altitude automatically, and that would be the end of it. And you could also, if I'm not going too far out here, you could probably cross-reference that data immediately with Flight Checker, right? Or another software, aviation software platform out there that is tracking current military and civilian aircraft in the airspace.
Exactly. Yep. In other words, because of the growth of technology, because of the advent of computers and accurate time clocks and a number of other things, we are now, for the first time in the history of mankind, able to detect UFOs and other targets. That you detect satellites and Canadian geese and weather balloons too, but you can filter those out through proper programming of your computer. We are able to detect the presence of UFOs on a real-time basis, and I'm not sure anybody's interested.
It's fascinating
to solved in January of 1995, and that's 25 years ago.
Well, we'll see if we can. Yeah, we'll see if we can generate some interest again through this program tonight. Let me ask you this, Peter, before I let you go. We only have a few minutes left. You've been at this for such a long time, and the word disclosure is thrown around. It's been thrown around for a long time, but certainly this last few years, it's like a free word now. Everybody's using it. Do you think that we are indeed in the days of disclosure? Have we reached that point?
Well, I don't know for sure. It causes me to grind my teeth when I hear disclosure, because there are many types of disclosure. But what I argue we can do is do our own disclosure with a passive radar system. And I solved the problem. I cracked the nut 25 years ago, and I'm not sure many people were paying attention when I made the proposal. And it's not just I who believes this. Many electrical engineers with whom I've talked shake their head and say it's an obvious solution to the problem. So,
do you remember?
I think.
Do you remember when SETI did their launch, and they said, "Okay, we're going to give. We need the help with everybody else's computers out there, so we're going to give you a little line of code, and you guys are going to process our data. We're going to use your computers to help us do this." And millions of people signed up. It should be the same thing with the passive radar system. It should be a natural willingness to just push this forward. I mean, SETI had too many volunteers.
Yeah. I corresponded with Dr. Jill Tarter about my proposal, and I proposed that we team up the National UFO Reporting Center with SETI. They had a lot of technological acumen that I didn't have access to, and it generated no interest. She said she would pass my letter along. She was retired at the time. I didn't realize that. This is about 4 years ago.
Right.
And she said that she would pass the letter along to the director of technology at SETI, and he would get in touch with me, but I never heard from them. I tried to call him several times, but did not get return phone calls.
It's interesting to me that we have finally have the media on board, right, which we've never had before. And yet the other areas that should be there, like SETI or the media across the country and I'm talking about the radio and television stations with the ability to help with their passive radar, that those doors haven't opened. And then there's other cases, UFO sightings, that completely get ignored by the media, and they want to pick and choose what they're reporting on these days. It's strange, Peter. Some things never change, do they?
No, they don't.
What's next?
Moving the world is difficult.
Yes, it is. What's next for you? Anything on the horizon with Nuforc?
Well, nothing new. I'm doing the same job I did 26 years ago, collecting UFO reports and releasing them for the general consumption of the American public, and in fact, anybody who has a computer. So I think if I've got to slow down a little bit. I turned 72 in January of this year, and the stress of this job is more than I should be applying to my body, I feel. It may be time for me to hang up my tinfoil-covered hat and move on to other things, less stressful.
Yeah, you know, just like I'm sure your father said to you and his father before him, it's the life you chose, right?
Yeah, that's right. I have nobody to blame but myself.
Nobody to blame but yourself. Peter, and we thank you so much for the life that you chose, my friend. Thank you so much. And I'm excited for the next time that we get a chance to have a conversation. Let's just don't make it so many years this next time around. And when you do establish some monetization of the Nuforc website, let us know so we can get it out there to the world.
Thank you for the generous offer, and it's always a delight to work with you, Jimmy. I really enjoy these get-togethers. They're all too infrequent, I'm afraid.
Yeah, they are, but soon we'll get out from this pandemic, and we'll be able to break some bread up there in Seattle. We'll come up and see you. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good night.
Peter Davenport, the National UFO Reporting Center. That right there is somebody that has done it all and continues to do it all for this community. And to reach out to Peter, it's all simple. You can go to Nuforc, NUFORC.org, Nuforc.org. The links are up at jimmychurchradio.com. With that, thank you so much, Peter. What a great conversation. I am going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I'm going to open up the phone lines. 747-228-27 747-228-2051. 747-228-2051. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be right back with your phone calls right after this short break. Stay with us.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Man, this is the guitar right here. This is the one. You know, what's really funny is that they're all set up, they're all ready to go, right? But this is the thing. I want to thank Peter Davenport too for the amazing conversation. That guy is a gift to the world, and thank you so much, Peter. But I don't have the time to play everything, right? Does that make sense, right? I don't have the time to do that. And when all guitars, they're instruments. They're made of wood. They're natural. They breathe. They're living. They have a personality and everything. And what you don't want to do is have one neglected. You can't do that, right? And this one has been up there, and I play, and I took this. This is magic. This guitar right here. This thing is just unbelievable. Anyway, that's it. And what's really cool about that particular guitar, it's got Yngwie pickups in it. I took out the Yngwie covers. I put on the stock covers, but those are Yngwie pickups. So it looks all standard, but it sounds amazing. It's absolutely amazing. All right. I'm bringing in calls, and I'm putting them on hold. 747-228-2051. And I'll get to all the calls here in a second. They're coming in, and I'm putting them on hold. So there you go. You get put on hold. You're just gonna listen to the hold music as I swing through these calls. And let's see who's up first. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Would that be me?
That would be you. Depends on who it is,
That would be me. I am Steve, and I live in Lockport, New York, right off good old Lake Ontario, my friend Jimmy Church.
Right on. So what's on your mind tonight, Steve?
Show, buddy. I was listening to him talk about the radar thing and everything and detecting the UFOs. Oh, man, I talked to you a while back and I think I told you a little bit about what happened to me when I was 3 years old. And again in 2011 on August 16th, when I saw it on my ceiling. I've had my own disclosure. I know they're here, and I have this emptiness in my heart. Like I need to know more. I was going to say the stuff that we've seen down here by the lake is just phenomenal, out of this world at best. At the least.
And
what does somebody like me do?
This is the thing. I was going through and looking at the list of reports that Peter sent me. We could have done 2 weeks worth of shows going through this. But Steve, just check this out. This is what he sent me. This is just little hand-picked things from his collection, his archive. 1936, October, in Eklutna, Arkansas. Alaska. 2 men hitchhiking to Anchorage. 1936, okay? 11 years before Roswell. 2 men hitchhiking to Anchorage witness a very bright light approaching their location at high speed. The object hovers over them, causing them to dive into a snowbank to escape from it. That's 1936.
Right.
Right? Now, you got to think about the state of our Air Force. Jet engines weren't around. Rockets weren't around. Certainly satellites or things like that weren't around. Helicopters hadn't been invented yet, right? None of that. And then you get a report like this in 1936. Here's another one from 1939. 1939. 3 young boys. This is right here in Southern California in Fontana, just south of or just east of L.A. 3 young boys returning from a local movie theater are suddenly illuminated from above by a very bright shaft of light. They run to a nearby orange grove and take cover. 1939. Explain that to me, right?
Well, the one I want to hear about a little bit more would be the one over here above the Power Authority in Lewiston, New York, in the 1945. And one of these days, I'm going to get to one of your shows where I can see and talk with you in person, and I'm going to tell you some things that I think would pretty well blow your mind.
Well, see, that's the thing,
back
Steve.
To my grandmother and my mother.
Well, that's the thing, Steve. We talk about 1947 as being such a pivotal year for a lot of different reasons, not just UFOs. A lot of things happened in 1947. CIA's created. The Air Force is created. Transistors are invented. I could go on and on. You look at the history of the world and look at year by year, and then you get to 1947, and you're like, holy crap, everything happened in 1947, right? But it's going before 1947. Get to 1945, 44, 39, 34, 32. What was going on in the skies before then? You know, because there were no there were no helicopters, there were no rockets. And you get these reports, beams of light, you know, in discs and things. Nobody was talking
back to the Bible that goes back before we were starting to record all this stuff.
Which is back to my point. The earlier you go, the more fascinating these cases are. You know, once you get before the Wright brothers, you know, and then you get before that, you get before the balloons in Paris, right? And the balloon technology that was happening in the 1850s. Go before all of that, and you have things sighting in the sky. The only things that were in the sky before that were birds, right?
Well,
that's
you
it.
know what I find funny? I was face to face with one when I was 3 years old. Willow Avenue, Niagara Falls. My father left for work. He worked midnights at Nabisco. I was face to face with one. I come out of my bedroom. I walked out my door, and it was 2 feet from me. It had bright orange eyes. It was black as cloaked black. It was a little taller than me, and the only way I can describe it was like an ant or a panther that was standing on 2 legs.
Wow.
That was my first one. That was the first time. I got scared, and I ran back in my bedroom and went to sleep. Don't remember anything. I've had some pretty wild stuff go on in between that period and when I saw him the last time in 2011. Face to face again. He was probably about 6 feet from me the second time. Eyes never blinked once.
The report.
So I've had my disclosure.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't get into this too much with Peter tonight, and I meant to. There was just too many things to talk about. But there are clusters of areas around the United States where things get cited a lot. And you have a lot in Washington and Oregon, and New Mexico, Arizona, a lot. But those aren't around big cities. And then you don't have nearly anything over Los Angeles. But New York State, New York City, all the way up the coast, obviously through the Hudson Valley, but all the way up to the Great Lakes. New York has got just about as many sightings as any place on the planet. Something is going on in New York State. There's just no question about it.
Can I tell you what I believe?
What do you believe, Steve?
I can back up everything I'm saying by having you meet somebody. But I believe somehow, some way, my grandmother couldn't have children. Wasn't supposed to never have children. There's that UFO sightings here back in 1945, and then my grandmother conceived my mother. Okay. Fast forward to when I seen it in 1968 when I was 3 years old. Looking back now at what I know, I think they were there that night to either check on my mother, who was pregnant with my brother, who was born in July of 68, and maybe they come to check on me too to see how I was doing. I don't know. Fast forward to 96, I have a son. I was with a girl that wasn't ever supposed to be able to have children. I was with her twice. 2 days before I was with her, I had an experience in my apartment where my body was locked up. I couldn't move. I could hear people all around me, and then I just went back to sleep, and that was it. Didn't think nothing of it. I was with this girl who I had known previously because she dated friends years and years ago. If I knew her, and I went to school with her. And we have a son today. And I don't even know if I should be telling you this on the radio, but we have a son today. She's never been able to have a child again, which is why I believe they helped my grandmother get pregnant also. It's something, and I don't have any other reason why they would even bother with me because I'm no one special, ex-truck driver.
Well, yeah, but
you
know, Steve, you have heard other contactees with the same, not exactly the same, obviously, but with the same feeling that it is a contact that has been lifelong with their family. It's not necessarily them as an individual. And you've heard this over and over again. I certainly have. I don't have the personal experience with this that others do, so I can't speak about this directly. But I have certainly interviewed and spoken with multiple people with the same type of stories where they're saying, look, man, it was my grandmother, then it was my dad, then it was me.
And they helped you. And they helped us. They helped me. I know they did.
Yeah.
I think I owe these beings, whoever they are, if they're whatever they are, I feel like I owe them everything. I really do.
Well, put your report together for 1995 and get back to me, man. I'd like to know. Or 1945. Did I say 95?
95. You did. That's all right. I'll go with it.
1945 in New York.
95.
Yeah. And let me know.
I got a picture my son took. I wasn't home, but he's got a picture he took with an LG phone, a cheap one, over our neighbor's house, just sitting there idling. I'll send it to you through Twitter.
Yeah. Send it to me. What's your name on Twitter?
What is my handle? Oh my God. You'll see me on there. I'll have a Make America hat on. I'll have one of Trump's hats on.
That's every one of my Twitter followers. What
right.
the heck?
I used to be Dice Man. I think I'm King Clay on there now.
King Clay?
King Clay, yeah, because I used to drive dump truck and I hauled the heaviest load on a triaxle Mack when we were laying the base for the landfill up here in the falls. And I hauled like 30 ton on a triaxle Mack, so they gave me the handle King Clay.
King Clay. All right, man. I'll look for it. Okay.
You'll know when you see it. The sky was blue, and you'll see it. And we had that UFO 8 years before fly right over our house, about maybe 2,000 feet above us, and it was big.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Big.
And
have a good night, buddy. Thanks for taking my call.
Go Beckley Tappy.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. The amount of sightings, 747-228-2051. The number of sightings over New York. And it also, now there were a couple of pretty major things that happened in New York City, but I keep going back to John Lennon and what now. And what he saw from the top of that building in New York, that is one of the craziest UFO eyewitness stories ever, and it's from John Lennon, and it's in New York City. Not outside, not in New Jersey, not upstate, no. It's not outside of Rochester. No, man, it's not in Poughkeepsie. It's in Manhattan. That is a crazy sighting, for sure. Something's going on in New York. And thank you for that phone call, Steve. 747-228-2051. Let me check this. Okay, we're good. 747-228-2051. Going back to, I didn't want to do this earlier. I actually got the time to go through some of this now. This is Peter's report list, right? And I'm going through this, and it's I don't know how many pages, 8 pages, hundreds of reports, right? But there is some crazy stuff in here, crazy. Like and I went through to get to some of the more modern stuff, and this is Kensington, New Hampshire, September 3rd, 1965. Many people in southeastern New Hampshire witness a peculiar disc-shaped object. Later, a young man and 2 police officers witnessed the disc up close, and it moves quickly. September 1994, Northern California. September 9th, multiple dramatic reports of objects streaking across the morning sky. A young schoolgirl reports to the school nurse being approached at a bus stop by a strange, diminutive gray creature. It's just Palouse, Washington, December 29th, 1994. A woman describes a shortcut home through a wheat field. 3 wedge-shaped objects with lights on their leading edge pass in front of her car. McMinnville, Tennessee, 1995, January 7th. Multiple witnesses on the ground report a fleet of peculiar-looking objects allegedly seen descending slowly and vertically. One of the objects appears to blow up. And that's in the evening. Just one, I could just do this, like I said, I could do this for days. Eastern United States, March 15th, 1995, multiple sightings reported from the eastern United States of bizarre blue-green egg-shaped object that streaked across the night sky, hovered, and then streaked across the horizon. Multiple witnesses. Just one report after another. And can you just imagine what Peter goes through all day long? The National UFO Reporting Center and that hotline going off and taking these reports. It's absolutely incredible. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hey, Jimmy, it's Paul.
This is Paul. Paul, where are you calling from?
Detroit, Michigan, a little bit south of Detroit, Michigan. I've called a few times. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Paul. South of Detroit. What is that? Indiana? I'm just kidding, Paul.
No. Lake Erie, still Lake Erie. We talked about Erie before. I love Peter, good guy. I've always been a fan of both of you guys. And to touch on what he was talking about today, he hit the nail on the coffin.
What's
if
that?
I was a rich guy, Jimmy, you and me, we would be on. I talked to you about Guam before in Hawaii. You and me and Peter would be on a plane, first class, to Hawaii and Guam, because I told you about how they had the abandoned space station. I've heard as far, because I lived there 3.5 years, they were doing the same kind of technology that Peter was describing tonight about, because even me, okay, if I was in the Army before, but even me, let's say I'm the most, not a skeptic, I don't believe in UFOs at all, but even the most dire skeptic, this is where I'm going with this, what would, as far back as 1950, NASA and the Navy be doing was huge towers in Hawaii and Guam, and they abandoned the ones in Guam. Like I told you in 90, we could go off, if we could fly to Guam tomorrow and you could see them, I could show them to you. But they just hit the nail on the coffin with what I was telling you about, that same kind of technology. You don't need the huge, the huge $1 billion, like whatever they used to listen to. Just the simple technology that Peter was talking about, radios, antennas, seeing what's in our atmosphere. And that's the same exact story I heard from many locals that have been working on these bases, the Navy base, you got the Anderson Air Force Base in Guam for years. And we met guys from Saida in Guam, too. A lot of them wanted us to use our laptops to help them listen to the space. Some of my friends actually did it. I didn't have a good enough laptop, but just to help them listen using it through our computers and radio waves while we were living in Guam. And some of my buddies helped them up, and it's a cool program. Well, what do you think, Jim? Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I agree with you, and I agree with Peter. We have a massive infrastructure, and that's sitting there. And as more and more time passes, where we are moving our entertainment and radio and television transmissions to cable. When I say cable, cable TV. I'm just talking about cable in general, onto the internet, where less and less of the transmissions are used and utilized in homes and cars through radio signals and television signals. And so those how do I say this? Those hardware installations, you have to remember that up until just recently, they were built all across the United States and Canada and Mexico. and talking about Guam, all the way out to Guam and Hawaii and all of the islands. Everything has got an installation on it for broadcast. It is there. We have the ability to tie it all together. And the infrastructure, when I say tie it all together, for data collection, the infrastructure of tying it all together is already there with the internet. And computers are probably already installed at each location all the way across North America. So we have the ability cheaply to just go write the software, get it installed, and start looking at the skies in a passive way. It just makes sense. And the ability to triangulate for altitude, for position, and for speed, right? So you can lock down on these objects individually, immediately, right there at the speed of light. You can find it. And then you turn around and cross-reference that data with known flight tracking software, of which there's a ton of that. A ton of it, both private and public, that are out there, and you can find out if it's a military or civilian aircraft. You can probably, through the data collection, find out with the passive radar the size of the object. And just like Peter said, very important, maybe even the makeup of the object, what it's made of, right? What the surface is like. All of this is right there. Peter's absolutely correct, and he has been on this since 1995 with a little movement, but not enough. And it seems simple. Some guy, and Paul, thank you for the phone call, and it's just a great point that Peter made tonight. And go back, Tepe. Thank you so much. That's Paul from just south of Detroit. Is that you would think that there is somebody in Silicon Valley right now that is just sitting there with the necessary funds and a software engineer and a staff that can go and bang this code out and just get it done. I just don't understand why it isn't happening, right? And it would also, it could be utilized for safety measures too as well. It wouldn't have to necessarily be only used for looking for UFOs and unidentified things in the sky, but other things, right? The safety of other planes that are out there, drones that are being flown in an unsafe manner, right? Dudes in a jetpack over LAX. But all of these things could be applied with this. But the infrastructure is there. Peter is absolutely right. Well, this was night one of our UFO week. Tomorrow night, right here, Alejandro Rojas from Open Minds is going to be here. And tomorrow night, Alejandro is going to speak about TTSA and their role that they are playing right now in these days of disclosure. And we're going to go through all of it tomorrow night with Alejandro. Really looking forward to that. And then Wednesday night, right here, Kevin Estrella from Pyramids on Mars. And all of Kevin's websites. If you're a guitar player, you want to take some lessons, we've got Kevin's websites up there. I was going through them today, actually, picking up a few licks. And that'll be Wednesday night. Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. So it's UFO week all week, this week on Fade to Black. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. I'll see everybody tomorrow night with Alejandro Rojas. Until then, be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.